Մեր այսօրվա քննարկումը ապագա հայկականը հանրային նախաձեռնության մասն է, թե ինչպես որ անհրաժեշտ է ներդրումներ կատարել գիտության, տեխնոլոգիաների եւ ստեղծագործականության մեջ, նորարարությունն ու զարգացումը խթանելու համար հատկապես առողջապահության, շրջակա միջավայրի եւ գիտելիքահեն տնտեսության ոլորտներում։
Yes. So it's called research and development in English for the business. Is, I think, a very important part of business as such. Because that's where people start looking at the needs, studying the needs. Some needs businesses may satisfy themselves. Like we can take care of our own needs in my business, in our business. I mean, we can do the research and development on our own, but of course we cannot do everything. We cannot cover all the fields required in only one company. So we start looking for some research centers, people we can cooperate with and try to get better results, deeper results. So that demand that comes to the business is the one that moves the business, moves the science forward. Well, they say develop the science. Everyone says that, but no one understands how, where should you start and how you should proceed. But if you're able to do it in a way so that the businesses are able to bring up their needs, and by those essentially compel the establishment of such centers, implement some projects, and then those centers may go around and find other businesses to help. So if there's no cooperation with the business sector, I don't think there's even a possibility to establish such research centers at all. Well, of course, I may speak on the sector of information technology only. Part of the companies do outsourcing, mostly. They get the results through outsourcing, but we have many business centers. I'm sure Arto will prove this. So, and also Yerevan may add from Synopsis that such type of companies are essentially those that may not go anywhere without serious research. They cannot do anything. They don't have any effectiveness. So maybe the government should also get into the play, trying to understand how to promote, how to incentivize the development of such companies to produce more research capacity in the Republic of Armenia, as that ultimately results in more copyrights, patents that are treasures for companies and ultimately for the state. That's where I see the development in research, and apparently this is the time to give the floor to my colleagues, please. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mark. You are the one moderating. I decided to do it on my own accord. Yes, thank you. Arto, it's your turn now. Hello. Very glad to be part of this discussion, by the way, and I'm also very glad that I got the opportunity to express my thoughts here. First of all, let me tell you a little bit what's been happening in research the last several months, what I've been doing specifically. So, IT sector in Armenia has established a whole movement, the main goal of which is to promote science, research and development and converse science and scientists more in the country. We have cooperated with the government, identified the main strategic vectors Armenia should follow, should move towards. The society should be better aware of role of the scientists. So the initiative works quite actively in this direction, and we hope that the primary results we have are going to be further augmented, and Armenia will ultimately move towards knowledge-based economy and stronger science. So I think what Ashot mentioned was really very relevant. Apparently, it should start from the government. It's the government that has to prioritize research in the first place. It requires fundamental investments. This is not a short-term endeavor. So endeavor you should look at, and because it ultimately requires years of experience and efforts to establish the necessary platform. So all countries have serious budgets used for research and development based upon the needs of a state. There is an obvious vector in the Republic of Armenia, that's the information technology it requires. And there is also the military industry that requires development. And there are also certain sectors that can bring very serious change to the sector, like artificial intelligence, for example, research in artificial intelligence, research in biophysics, biology. There are quite many interesting sectors that contain big potential for the Republic of Armenia, for the development of the Republic of Armenia. Also, all the patents and new discoveries in the sector will ultimately result in larger companies that will be able to transform the economy of the country as a whole. So the Gituj movement, as such, pursues the goal of having the Republic of Armenia spend at least 4% of the state budget on funding research. So, for it to be clear, let me tell you, we spend less than 0.5% on science, which means we have to increase the budget 8 times. A specific way, then. So, the other concept is the image of a researcher, the scientist. Sometimes people complain why scientists do not produce anything. What's the value of having science or looking or considering science at all? Well, knowledge is what a scientist produces. And it is somehow manifested in forms of articles in international magazines. So patented if it contains the value. So that's where the work of a researcher ends. And the second step is the transfer of that technology, of the discovered or invented technology, to the businesses. That's where the businesses have to take it, turn it into a product, and sell it to the whole world. So the second part is for the entrepreneurs to deal with. So if we don't have the strong science or research, we will not have the knowledge-based economy, and ultimately we will not have companies that will be interested in changing the world. Check the 5 largest companies in the world with a market capitalization, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. They're all knowledge-based. They're all technology-based. And they have reached the ultimate level by making endless investments into research and development. And that the knowledge that has been produced through that has been successfully transformed into business and revenue ultimately. So, provided Armenia is not the case yet in that respect, there are very few companies doing that or moving in that direction. The government has to do things here so that we understand it, so that we have that perception, so that we're able to fund the most important works for us. And I'm sure in several years we'll create the knowledge base that will be the foundation for the businesses to flourish. We dream will flourish in the Republic of Armenia and significantly change the condition of our economy. I have to apologize to interrupt, but I'll ask you to think about the following. Like what Armenology may turn into as a business, or what can businesses use like from history or Armenology. We'll discuss that a little later. Now give the floor to Yervan Zoryan, please. Very well, thank you. Coming back to the same issue, by the way, let me tell you that I agree with Ashod and Arthur in general. And I'd not like to focus your attention on one specific point here. Look at the work that we do as work done in an ecosystem. As a pipeline, it's a whole pipeline of works done, or it's a pipeline of people moving towards a goal. So if you want to have strong knowledge-based economy, then we have to start from scratch. We have to start from the earliest phases, education in schools and universities. And then it's research and development and innovation. And then the businesses, companies, operations, large and small ones that are going to take those ideas and turn them into businesses benefiting the country and individuals as such. So we need to have that. And the weakness of a link is going to have the whole system collapse. So if you have like only education without research, it won't be useful. You have to have the three in a circle. In order to do that, we need to have enthusiasm, capacity, involvement. So we need to look at this as a triangle: education, government, and the private businesses. So it is the cooperation among the three required to have success. Because if they continue working in isolation as they do now, by the way, they won't get any results, in fact. The government plays a very important role, but the private businesses do as well. Uh, and they have to cooperate. So cooperation in this triangle is very important. It's very important to have it, not only in Armenia, but also in other Armenian centers, like in diaspora, for example. We may discuss separate possibilities here. So this triangle in Armenian diaspora and the government may also be a compliant one, like education in the diaspora, companies in the diaspora. We can create the integrity of actions, and the situation and circumstances simply require cooperation. We have to cooperate, work together, and establish the ecosystem in the right way so that it doesn't have flaws. Okay, thank you. So shortly, as to what you've said, Ashot Ovanesyan spoke of businesses and pronounced them the locomotives of research. Arto Minasyan spoke of Gituj as a movement, underlining that the choice of the most important research or scientific sectors. And Yervan Zoryan spoke about an ecosystem. He also named it a pipeline. And also about the triangle, where the government, the businesses, and education have to work together. All right, so this is the time to respond. Well, of course, my colleagues have made very, very important statements, and no one may ever underestimate the role of education. But if you go into the depths of this, you will understand that a lot of issues have to be solved, first of all. Our education degrades, and businesses try to fill that gap, which is not for them. Partially, maybe. Well, it's a different topic. But if we try correcting that, it may last 10 to 20 years. Because we need new generation, we need new PhDs. We should give them a lot of opportunities so that they develop enough to be able to bring up a new generation. But how can we have them reach that level? Because now it does not progress. It's just a circle, a vicious one, I should say, the traditional dilemma of a chicken and egg. So I guess that's where the diaspora should play the most significant role. And I suppose there are genuinely talented compatriots of ours who are now in various universities, and there are several movements of which we spoke already, and I'm truly delighted to hear about that, to hear Armenian specialists work for international organizations, but I guess that experience should come to our universities so that it becomes part of their curricula, so that the universities understand that they cannot act alone. They have to try to be more flexible and involve that huge potential existing abroad. Not to say that it will be possible to invite these people to Armenia for a month or two, or maybe create some attractive conditions for them to come to Armenia and teach and further improve the connections, and maybe have them bring their friends to Armenia, not Armenian friends necessarily. So it has to move forward. And I guess it can be done in a period of 3 to 5 years. In 3 to 5 years, we might have the level of development which otherwise could be reached in 5 or maybe 20 years. I deviating a little, but provided Yerevan spoke of this as part of the triangle, I decided to touch upon it in more depth. Well, frankly, before our discussion started, I knew and I understood that we would speak of the educational system for sure. I knew we would touch upon education, so in fact, we're not deviating even. This is a very important part of our discussion today. Ardo, the floor is yours. Yes, thank you, Mark. So the triangle Yervant mentioned with education, businesses and government. Naturally, if you don't have good education, you cannot have proper research, and there will be no innovation and no business. If there is no innovative businesses, then you are not going to have enough funding for the education. So that triangle as a pipeline is very important. And I'd like to add that the best professors in the world are the ones who are actively involved in research, because they know the most relevant developments in the sector, are able to hand that back to the next generation. So that connection, in fact, is bilateral, it's two-sided. Also, coming back to the humanitarian sciences, you mentioned, Mark, like history or Armenology, for example, what business may be born out of that? Well, it's very difficult to say at once on one side. On the other side, these businesses are of strategic nature for the Republic of Armenia and may actively be used in foreign policy, in development of the state policy of the Republic of Armenia, and maybe part of the cultural heritage and the values. So in this respect, all these disciplines have to be funded properly and well nourished in the Republic of Armenia. So I had my master's in physics and then the PhD in math. So in physics, there are certain disciplines, sub-disciplines, also in math, which are also quite interesting just on their own, but they're not applied. At least their application is not visible. It's just a very expensive endeavor for Armenia at this moment. Compared to that, in artificial intelligence, in microchips, we can see technologies that can develop very quickly from products into revenue. So we need to understand what the strategy of Armenia is here. And based on that, we will have to fund all the most important disciplines. And then when we get very rich, as luxury, we may allow ourselves some funding for the fundamental ones, as the super states do, like the United States or France, or the technologically developed ones like Singapore. Okay, that's my point of view. Thank you. Yerevan, the floor is yours. Very well. I'll try to now respond to both. I agree that we're on the same page with this triangle and pipeline. And there are two questions. One might be a little less relevant as it's more related to quality. But I should also say that both quality and quantity are of importance here in terms of developing the pipeline. Here we need both the quality and the quantity. So maybe we haven't done enough either in education or in technology, or maybe in higher education specifically, or in research and development. Maybe we haven't done enough of connecting the researchers to the businesses. We have many companies in the Republic of Armenia today who do not have enough staff. They just don't see people that can work in their companies. They don't find them. Thousands of vacant positions now that are not being filled. It's not only my company, by the way. And they're looking for qualified professionals who can come and occupy those places. And provided they're not coming from Armenia, they find them elsewhere. So we need to think about quantity as well. Also, it means that from the youngest age, we should start teaching them, telling them how attractive these sectors could be. They should start schools, and then it should go to the universities, and then it should turn into a whole pipeline. So we've done some studies, and we found out that there have been very, very little numbers of people going to STEM sciences. Previously, there were definitely more. Now, it's less than 10 in 100 deciding to choose the STEM. And that's because of the schools. The schools should apparently promote these disciplines more. Meanwhile, training in STEMs or the sector as such, the system doesn't have enough specialists. We don't have enough professors, teachers, tutors. We don't have people who will teach the youth. So I think that we should start from the lowest level, doing math and physics and biology, and then try to make it more attractive and interesting for children. And that's where we may start solving the problem of quantity and have more people in the pipeline, so-called, and have more employees in the future. So that's what I'd like to underline as well. So it's not only quality, but quantity as well. Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, let me now bring our discussion to the ground a little bit. Try to. So 91% of employees in our educational system are public employees. Only 9% are in private schools, colleges, and universities. So an average salary of those working in the public sector monthly is 116,000 Armenian drachms. That's a little more than $200 a month. In the non-public sector, or the private one, it's about 170,000. So let me also tell you that the other post-Soviet states, our neighbors, pay more in all of them, which means that the sector of education for serious specialists, serious scientists, for people who have reached a level, is simply not attractive. In order to read a special course at the university, I essentially earned 25,000 Armenian drachms for the whole semester, which means a whole semester I was doing just charity. Well, of course, there are people who would like to do that, providing knowledge to students in kind. But we should also add to what Yervan said, that our universities mostly do not produce specialists. They do not do that because in all departments, with some exceptions, 2/3 of the students do not do what they learn at the universities. So we are not able to solve the problem by just replacing the decision makers in the universities as they wanted to in 2018. These are problems sitting in depth of the system. So if you have ideas about the problem, opportunities maybe you should point to, or suggestions, recommendations, we're going to start from Yerevan this time. I mean, you have to change it time after time. All right, thank you. Quite right, indeed. The salaries of the teachers is very low. They are quite devoted, we know, our teachers, very loyal to profession, but naturally, they have to earn properly. We know how much salaries they get, and they may sometimes find private jobs and get paid more, naturally, so they prefer other jobs, private jobs, which is definitely not $200 a month. So if that person is able to do research, then he has to be taken into account by the system, by the companies. And in the universities of Armenia today, there are less and less such people. Because, okay, they're loyal to a profession, but they have to earn money. I'm sorry. And we need a change. But the change should start by increasing their salaries. And I think the government has a role to play here, as Ashot said. Indeed, especially in public universities. And our companies, the international foundations, should apparently find the alternative to maybe multiply those salaries, or maybe not okay, 3-4 times, not 10% or 20%. So people want to do their jobs, want to stay there and see their lives as professors, as teachers. So provided we are not able to provide for the quantity of staff in my company, we may get actively involved and in 4 universities in Armenia, and we provide funds, and we find teachers, and we establish laboratories, so that these specialists are produced in the universities. So we do it in Armenia because we're sure that in Armenia we'll be able to produce such people, and they will be helpful for us in the future. So every large company has to do that. Should the international foundations do that? I think yes, they should. So if the teachers ultimately get very little salaries, we cannot demand a lot from them. So that's a big gap we should cover, first of all. Thank you. I would like to once again ask our viewers to ask questions. Questions related to research, development, innovation. Ask them now. Ask our experts, and they will be able to answer. Arto, the floor is yours. Thank you. I agree. There have to be systemic solutions here. Salaries have to grow. The faculty and teachers in schools, obviously. And coming back to what Yervan said in the very beginning, yes, salaries in the private sector are like 10 or 15 times higher than that. Respectively, it will be very difficult to pay them such competitive salaries in the universities or schools. Objectively, there has to be a consensus, which is the following, in my opinion, 3 components respectively. First, we should bring the resources together and increase the monthly salaries to the extent possible, as much as the budget allows and as much as the international supporters will afford. Let's put all that on increasing the salaries. But naturally, that's not the only thing we should do to get to the highest level. As the second step is the following. People teaching at schools or universities may also do that charity-based. They've just decided to kindly provide their knowledge to the future generations because of patriotism or any other feelings they have. There is an opportunity there as well. And the third possibility, as Yervan also mentioned, is the following. I think every large company in the Republic of Armenia should just start investing in universities right now, creating laboratories jointly, by the way, something we have started doing with Yerevan State University, based on artificial intelligence. They can offer scholarships, they can provide higher pensions, for example, to professors, faculty members, etc. So I mean, it can definitely be a solution. You can multiply the salaries. And of course, there can be grants. If there are some strategic sectors, certain experts or specialists want to get in, then naturally they can be funded and do their research in those directions. So when trying to understand those sectors which are closer to the STEM, then I should not say easily, but if we want to do that, then it will clearly be possible to correct the problem, increase the salaries of professors and make the sector competitive. Thank you, Ashot. I should say, well, first of all, the approach has to change in general. By now, education, health, they have been subsidized heavily. And there is no economic benefit from subsidization for the state in general. They need to have them, and that's why the budget pays attention. That's the wrongest thing that could be done there, and it has been done in Armenia. So we need to understand that education and health are the most important economic directions. But an investment, like a dollar investment in education, is not visible instantly. It comes back in 5 years, 8 years. That's why the governments are not that interested. Because by the time results come, they will not be in the government anymore. And many governments pursue quick results. They do things that might become visible right away. That's where the problem is. If we're not able to change the strategy in health and education, we won't reach far. And that's what it means. And Arto started quite correctly mentioning the percentage of the budget spent on education today. So it has to change instantly because that's the foundation. That's when speaking of strategy, when mentioning the strategic potential of the Republic of Armenia, education is the milestone. And that's where you have to start. Well, of course, it's not the end. There are other ways of doing it, like the whole world does. Maybe the most developed countries do. The most successful businessmen graduating from a certain university would try returning, paying back to their alma maters, and that's not the culture we have. It has to be developed so that businesses know that it starts from their own schools and universities. That's where they have to be. So this is a hard way to choose, but we have to. We have to. The other issue, the quantitative one. So universities are quite conservative. They produce all types of specialists without even assessing the need for those. So what you said, Mark, when 2/3 graduate from a department of a university, but they never do the job. I mean, they never work in the sector where they learn things. So the university is now trying to cover everything. They're trying to teach everything. No, we don't need that anymore. Times change. And ultimately, we don't have people where we need them, and we have many where we don't. And these people do not find jobs, so they start looking for other jobs. Like, I don't know, they produce so many economists that these economists really don't have any work. They go around, I don't know, trying themselves in some IT companies. So it's a complex issue, and finally, an extensive reform has to be implemented to bring the demand and supply together, as what is being produced has to reflect the demand. In IT, as Yervan said quite correctly, so many positions vacant now, they're not able to find anyone. But the government still subsidizes some traditional sectors, saying create workplaces. We don't have people who can go and do the work. We don't need to create workplaces. There are many workplaces. There are no specialists that can occupy them. So maybe they should produce these specialists. That's where you should be looking at now. So the only positive thing in the whole situation today, I learned of the survey carried out by Future Armenian. I just got the data saying that 57% of respondents to the survey want to return to Armenia, want to repatriate. Do you imagine what that is? It's a huge potential. It's a power. And those arriving in Armenia are not juniors. These are people, these are experienced people. These are people that can come and fill those gaps right away. That's where we should be looking at. And maybe if we're not able to do it on our own here in Armenia, we should try doing it by promoting repatriation. Well, of course, some percentage want some conditions. They say it has to be safe and stable, and workplaces and everything. All right, we can afford that later as well. And that's where they will come and face corruption. I should say cronyism, when the nephew is more important than a good specialist. Two sentences to add. I should also say that there are questions already, and of course we are going to hear them all. However, one of the studies, one of the surveys carried out states that 96% of the population in Armenia has secondary education. And about 46% have higher education, which means half of the population of the Republic of Armenia residing in villages or towns, I don't know, in the capital or maybe in some bordering settlements, half of the population has university education. Well, I guess it's a very big number, isn't it? What do you think? Yerevan? Apparently correct. Yeah. We may compare it with the other countries to say whether it's high or low. Yeah, but these people who have the higher education, have they found jobs in the sectors they have studied? Have they? And finally, they cannot all become businessmen because it's not something everyone can do. So the respective work has to be done. Like if we need development, then we need to bring up developers, etc. Okay, 46%, 47%. It's a good figure, but who are they? Are they needed? As far as I remember, in Soviet times, the number of people with higher education was much higher, and there were more universities in Armenia. If I'm not mistaken, the number of higher education the number of people with higher education was about 90%. But now it's just demand-based. Just assess the demand and produce that many specialists. Thank you. Yes, indeed, 46% is quite impressive. In fact, it could have worked quite well. Arto, please. Nothing to add to what Yervan said. I fully share and agree. We need to assess the demand on the market. We need to understand how much the market needs and who the market needs. There is a big trend now that people who have studied banking and economics now study development, programming, when they're already 35 or 40 years old, trying to find work in the IT with a big demand of specialists and no specialists around. So if we plan it properly, we may succeed. Otherwise, we may have very many highly educated people, I mean higher education, but no one needed. Ashok? Well, you know that percentage. I don't think it's high even, because this is the 21st century, and it's a new type of an economy here, quite different from the 19th and the 20th century. It's a knowledge-based economy. That's what it is now. So it's not just a physical capacity of the labor force that is required, but the intellectual capacity. So even if it's 87, we will not lose, but we will win, because essentially we will have more opportunity of using the intellect, and that will be the minimum threshold. So I may second Yervant when he asks who these 46% are. It's great that we have 46% of the population with higher education, but who are they? Have they found jobs in respective sectors? Like in the United States, for example, if you want to recruit someone, you see him studying sociology and then doing masters in computer science. You're surprised. How could that ever happen? Yeah, but it happens. There are people who change in time, and they want other things. They have other preferences. So I guess it's also a right thing to do. Yes, through your career, you may see and learn new things. Your environment changes, but naturally, in general, we should try doing it as follows. The knowledge gained at a university has to be used, because it will be very difficult for these people to learn anything new when they're older, because the best years are the years when you are a student. Thank you. I think we can start asking the questions. One of the questions, it's by Magda Arababian. I'm now interpreting from English. What do you think? Wouldn't it be correct նորից սովորեցնել այն մասնագիտությունները, որոնց պակասը որ կա այսօր, որպեսզի այդ to retrain older population over 35 to meet the shortage of the skills that are needed in your businesses, thus addressing the challenge of quantity. Yervan, you started that discussion. You'll have to answer first. Oh, I agree. So I guess, yeah, it may be useful bringing the 35-year-olds in. Yeah, maybe training them in something new, having them do something new and fill the gaps in the vacancies in the sector of technology. All right, it can happen, but this is not for the expertise level. I mean, doing masters or doctors, getting a doctor's degree in a certain sector is quite hard in that age. As for technology, then this is valuable experience. Yes, research, development cannot be taught through a training. You have to do that for years And you may get to a certain level in development in the research or technology sector, but that's where you'll stop, because anything further will require more education, longer education. Thank you, Ardo. You'll answer the next question first. Yeah, when Yeran answers questions, I may only agree. Well, I should say 35 years is not, is quite young. I mean, you should not think that 35 years is the end of life and you cannot do anything new. I know people who learned doing new things when they were 50, took a tennis racket in their hands when 50, and played much better than many 20 or 25-year-olds when they were 60. So do not be distressed with the age, but find something that's really fit for you, and that's your thing. Quite inspiring indeed. I fully agree, Asha John. I may only add that when you start playing tennis in 35, you will not become world champion. You have to start when you're 7. Yeah, but it's not about becoming world champions ultimately. Yeah, but I meant something different, and everyone also mentioned, like if you want to work on a new algorithm or a new technology that might have a significance for the world, then you have to get longer education. You have to learn longer. I mean, you have to be there for a longer period of time. You should start like in 20 so that you do it when you're 35. So that's my point of view. Thank you. The next question by Arman Hovanesyan. How may we have an effective educational system that will contribute to a strong system of Armenian values, and specialists are born in such a system? Well, apparently it consists of 2 parts. So first is about having a quality education system that will produce professionals, and the second is that in that educational system there will be a system of Armenian values, right? Well, solving the first is well known, at least in the world. Different countries have managed building effective educational systems by different methods. And the second part is a little harder because there's no definition of an Armenian system of values. And there are many renowned Armenians who have quite different systems of values, and there is no one Armenian. I may be mistaken, correct me, please, but if Arman meant that people should, apart from being good professionals, be also worthy citizens of the Republic of Armenia, if that's what you meant, then it's a different issue completely. In that case, you should teach them the laws, tell them what it means to be a citizen of the Republic of Armenia and how their voices are important for the decision making, what it means to preserve your homeland, and independently from whether you are a cook or a programmer, and how you should be behaving as a taxpayer, and how is the budget formed, etc. That's what we have to teach people. And when we have professionals who are also good citizens, valuable citizens, then the country will only benefit. Thank you. Thank you. Ashot? Well, frankly, I think that Armenianship or the patriotism, it's late. It will be too late to teach it in the universities. It has to be done in kindergartens and schools, in the years where people are formed. I see higher education or university education as a way to establish professional skills. It's quite late to speak of patriotism in that age. So that is why I think such issues have to be, such education has to be provided in kindergartens and schools. Let the universities do the professional part of it. Thank you. Yervant? Well, I think, yes, both the knowledge and the skills are important because it's divided into two parts, like information or knowledge and the connection with other Armenians. So this is an issue for Armenia and an issue for the diaspora. And it's apparently more required in the diaspora because it resides in different frameworks and frameworks where your Armenianship might be a little more manifestly represented. So doubtlessly, I agree, you have to start teaching patriotism since younger ages, but you can do that in older ages as well. In any age, you will be exposed to certain knowledge about your homeland, like the online school that we have today. And it works both for Armenia and for the diaspora. It provides general information depending on your age. There's another very important thing, is the connection. You have to establish the connection from Armenia to the diaspora and vice versa. Different communities in the diaspora. So creation of that connection is also a requirement. Hence, that understanding has substance and requires connection to flourish. Thank you. Provided our time extends, I'll suggest doing the following now. There's one question that I'd like you to touch upon, at least superficially. Let's have a round of discussion on that question. And another round of your concluding remarks and wrap up. Okay, so my question. Time after time, after the establishment of the Third Republic of Armenia, we discussed transformation of the academia. We said it would always be more expedient to develop research or science in the universities. There are two well-expressed opinions here. The staff of the academic institutions think that this system is better, is more effective, and naturally is closer to Armenian realities. What do you think about such recommendations and approaches? Gentlemen, Arto, provided you are also the representative of Gituj and founder thereof, you can start. Mark, frankly, it was interrupted and I didn't hear the question well. All right, so what's your opinion about the issue, the problem that occurs in our society time after time, that this is the time to transform the academia, and maybe science should move to the universities and not stay in the Academy of Science of the Republic of Armenia? Oh, okay. Well, I think the Academy of Science of the Republic of Armenia is a well-established institution, and there are quite many research institutions working inside, publishing hundreds of scientific articles annually. And there are many researchers working quite effectively inside the system. Well, of course, there is the ineffective part of it as well that may be revisited and may be fine-tuned with some methods, which are quite well known. Nevertheless, I think we should keep the Academy of Science of the Republic of Armenia and maybe galvanize it. Because if we have an agency that is able to have hundreds of articles published in internationally known magazines, we should not refuse it. We can improve it, we can develop it, we may correct the shortcomings, we should create such establishments in the universities, yes, but we should keep the academia, I mean the Armenian Academy of Science, active. That's my opinion. Thank you, Ashot. Well, you see, I think our Academy of Science was established in Soviet time, and it continues through inertia. In many countries, there are no such institutions like the Academy of Science. Most of the science is done in the universities. No university professors may only lecture. They are also researchers. They're active researchers so that they're able to involve the students into the process. And I think that is the main difference. That's how the university education differs from the one in the academy. I think, and also given traditions left from Soviet Union, it will be better to keep the institutions of the academy. Maybe we should carry out an inventory and understand whether we really need all these institutions inside the Academy of Science. Do they have the ability to compete? Are they competitive? Otherwise, they have to be closed so that the potential is further grown in the ones that can compete internationally. So we should pay more attention, indeed, growing science in the universities. Thank you. Yervand? Very well. Well, first of all, as a model, research and development in the academy, and not having it in the universities is not a sufficient model. The universities should also have their research capacities built and developing. As Ashot mentioned, in the United States, for example, and in other countries, the professors, they lecture and they do research in their free time, say so. So bringing this together is very important. We should have both. Like Stanford, for example, has the Silicon Valley, and the same professor is the best teacher and the best researcher, for example. So, as for the Academy of Science of the Republic of Armenia, the model of an Academy of Science has been quite successfully implemented in many countries. Of course, in Soviet Union, in Armenia and Ukraine and other countries, but we also have the same in Europe. We have in America, we have the National Lab, which is essentially the same thing, and it does quite contemporary research. There's the JPL and the CNRSC network, for example, the same in Germany. So institutions carrying out academic research have to exist, and they do exist, and they're quite successful. So there have to be a parallel drawn. But the question is not to have or not to have an Academy of Science. I think we need to have an Academy of Science, and they do a lot of important things, indeed, as Arto mentioned. However, it is the time to modernize it. It's very important. It's very important to modernize its laboratories, change the staff, not keeping the old specialists there, but bringing in the new ones. It has to be a pipeline. And now we're coming back to things that you were saying, Mark. So modern labs have to be able to spend money to grow. And can be done by public and private companies. They should invest in the academy so that the latter is able to grow, to develop. Thank you. I guess this is the time to wrap up. The final remarks, gentlemen. And before you tell us yours, let me tell you that our dialogue, our discussion today ultimately faded on a number of several very general ideas, one of which is Uh, Teaching as a job should become more attractive. And first of all, by salaries that have to be increased. So the increase of salaries is not just an additional burden on the state, but part of that burden should be taken by the funds, foundations, both Armenian and international, various business companies that naturally hope to get the share thereof from that university education in form or in shape of talented students. There are vacancies, which means that we should revise the system of admission to the universities that should come into more compliance with the demands of the economy today. And we also discussed the development in university and academy education, and there should be definitely discriminate approach there. So, and that's what Arto Minasyan mentioned. Ashot Hovanesyan was sure that it still made sense to continue focusing on the university model, and it has to be, this way or another, modernized so that we get the pipeline through which a young researcher or a specialist is able to reach the heights of science and business. So your closing remarks, and we're starting from the reversed alphabetical order. Yervant, please. Okay, thank you very much. So I guess we conversed education a lot, trying to understand its connection with uh, innovation. Well, I think creativity and innovation are not only about science, they can be in arts, in literature, everywhere. Innovation takes place everywhere today, and it is the one that dominates everywhere. It, it, it has conquered companies, and because it's beneficial, not for your country, but it's beneficial for the world. One point to add: innovation, creativity sometimes are related to technology, but they're not isolated. They are interconnected. So they have to be brought forward together. Anywhere, in any discipline. So if I'm a geographer, for example, I have to innovate the methods of teaching so that I do it in the best way. So innovation is not for scientists only. It's required everywhere. And anywhere that people can understand technology better and make it benefit from from the innovation or innovative minds. So we have to be able to bring it to the virtual world. Thank you, Arto. Well, very briefly now about the American and the English models. There are two models. One is the English American one, where science takes place in universities only, and there's also the German and French models, then inherited by Russians and then used in Armenia, where there are educational institutions like universities, and there are research establishments separately. That's the Academy of Science. So, and there is no evaluation. There's no assessment. No one says this one's better than the other. They're both effective, but I think the combination of these two will be the best for Armenia. So if we have this pipeline where education uh, takes them to universities and then to the businesses, then it's up to the academy to deal with the next phase. So if we have a pipeline of that kind, we'll be able to organize education in Armenia in a more effective way. And finally, I'd like to say that in 1988, there were 40,000 researchers in the Republic of Armenia. Now we have 4,000, 2,000 of which are close to their pension age. In other words, science is dying in Armenia. And if we want the goal number 11 to be implemented, so Armenia becomes a knowledge-based economy, a strong military industry, and knowledge-based state, then we should save science in Armenia and bring young researchers, the fresh strength. Yes, the power. Ashot, you started and we'll finish it. Okay, yes. Of course, the discussion we had today mostly was related to technology and science. There's only one example I'd like to bring from the arts, but I think it's quite a sonorous one related both to education and science. I'm sure you all know the singer Hasmik Papian. She's well known. She was born and grew up and got her education in Armenia, and then she moved to Europe. And she performed in all stages of the world, I should say. A world-renowned person indeed. And but finally, she decided that she had to come back to Armenia, and she came back to Armenia. And she brought all the knowledge and experience that she'd gained abroad, and established a studio, vocal studio in the State Conservatory. The main goal was to produce singers. And just a month ago, first time in history, she staged an opera, Orpheus and Eurydice, which just astonished all of us. And we understood how she changed the perception of opera singing among students. They understood that they can do it. They're not just students. And the same thing is just applicable anywhere. Technology. So I just want to once again underline the role of the diaspora here. We have so many talented people, and most of them got their education in Armenia. It's the time for them to come back, to bring the knowledge they had abroad to Armenia. Bring it here, bring it back, give it to us. It will change the quality right away. The whole life of a university will change right away. It will be brought up to a higher level, and education and science will develop. It's the domino effect. I think that's the future. Thank you. Thank you. Let's finish our discussion. Wrap up our discussion today. The participants were Ashot Ovanesyan, Art Ominasyan, and Yervan Zoryan. And I moderated Mark Grigorian. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you, Mark, very much. Thank you for the work that you've done as a moderator. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.